When deciding what you want to do in the United States Army, maybe you want to do a dangerous job, maybe you don't want to do a dangerous job, you want to kind of weigh, which one would be the more dangerous one compared to which one would be the least dangerous, whatever the case could possibly be. I want to outline some dangerous jobs and some non-dangerous jobs to give you that idea. I'm U.S. Army veteran Christopher Chaos, and let's talk about some of the most dangerous jobs and the least dangerous jobs in the United States Army. What's up, my friends? Welcome to a brand new video. In this one, we're talking about some of the most dangerous and least dangerous jobs in the Army. And while I'm talking about a handful of them, there are other ones outside of here. There are a lot of possibilities of jobs that are potentially dangerous and ones that are not potentially dangerous. So I just wanted to grab a few common MOSs that maybe I can easily outline that are dangerous or not dangerous, but there are other ones outside of this, right? I'm not going to be able to list every single MOS in the United States Army and tell you these ones are the dangerous ones and these are the least dangerous ones. I mean, there's probably more least dangerous jobs than there are dangerous jobs, but let me give you a little bit of an idea as to which ones are dangerous and which ones are not dangerous and why. If you're interested in this type of content for the United States Army, to learn about it, to prepare for the Army, curiosity, whatever, just make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, check out the links down below, and let's dive into it and let's talk about the first one that I have on this list as far as a dangerous MOS, and you probably can predict what it's going to be. That is an 11 Bravo, which is an infantryman. Of course, you probably predicted that that is a dangerous MOS. Well, let me kind of explain why. So obviously, if there is a combat deployment that an 11 Bravo is on, that's a pretty dangerous job to be doing in a combat environment. As of making this video, combat deployments are not very common. I think the only ones that are kind of going on is really Iraq, right? We've pulled out of Afghanistan. We don't really have any other major conflicts going on that include combat deployments. So combat deployments right now are pretty scarce. That's the whole reason why they're getting rid of the National Defense Service ribbon at the end of 2022, but that doesn't mean things can't change. Something can easily happen tomorrow, the next day, whatever, that changes our whole scheme of things, and suddenly we do have some combat deployments that are going on, and now that changes the narrative as far as what I'm saying here. As far as right now, there's not a lot of combat deployments. But nonetheless, you need to go in there with full transparency, because when I joined the Army, there was nothing going on, so I did not expect to have to do anything other than possibly just doing my job stateside until 9/11 happened, and then all of a sudden there was a lot of combat deployments and I did have to do my job in a combat environment. But we're talking about 11 Bravos, right? 11 Bravos in a combat environment, they're doing a lot of very dangerous stuff, right? They're having to go into these towns, to go search buildings, to go execute missions that they have a individual they believe is, part of the enemies or whatever, and they're going in and they're raiding those houses, raiding those buildings. They're going to secure locations. We need to secure this building because the enemy has been using it for, attacks or mortar attacks or whatever the case is. But the 11 Bravos, they are the individuals that are doing the fight. So of course, you probably would expect that they have a very dangerous job, especially mainly, I guess, in a combat environment. Now, I say mainly in a combat environment because there is still potential for danger when you're not in a combat environment, right? 11 Bravo is going to have to work with weapons and all sorts of other things, doing training and everything like that. So because of that, it can still potentially have some level of dangerousness. Even, is that dangerousness a word? I think that's a word. In an environment that is not a combat deployment, right? So even though you're not in a combat environment, you could be in some kind of training event, something could happen, an accident, some kind of malfunction, whatever, that could still make that job somewhat dangerous, even though you're not in a combat deployment. Obviously, much higher of danger level in a combat environment, but still some danger level even when you're not in a combat environment. So let's move into an MOS that is not very dangerous, and that is a 42 Alpha, which is a human resources specialist. 42 Alphas are the individuals that are responsible for making sure you're getting paid still, making sure that if you're eligible for promotions, that stuff's getting processed. If you're supposed to be getting awards, you're getting awards, all sorts of other things that are like HR related things for the United States Army. In a combat environment, let's say, for example, those individuals work inside of an office and they're still doing those same things they would do back stateside, but for those soldiers that are out on that deployment with that unit. Because I've talked about this many times before, it's not like when these combat environments happen, these combat deployments happen, it's just these 11 Bravos, these tankers, these scouts, these whatever infantry individuals or combat individuals are the only ones going on these deployments. You have an entire unit that has to deploy and people to support those individuals and for what the mission is going on. These 42 Alphas are one of those individuals that will go on these combat deployments. But their primary job is going to be working inside of an office type environment. Now, does that make it to where they are completely 100% safe? No. Their chances are much lower, compared to especially like the MOS talked about before with an infantryman with an 11 Bravo, but not 0% chance of, getting killed in action or something happen to them, because there are factors that can still happen that could put a 42 Alpha in danger. Their chances are much lower, compared to especially like the MOS talked about before with an infantryman with an 11 Bravo, but not 0% chance of, getting killed in action or something happen to them, because there are factors that can still happen that could put a 42 Alpha in danger. For example, right, if you, let's say as an example, that I've experienced, right, in Iraq, right, we had to start off in Kuwait and we had to move from Kuwait into Iraq. So those 42 Alphas still have to move from Kuwait to Iraq. So something could have still happened in transit, right? They're trying to get from Kuwait to the FOB that they're gonna be working on inside of, Baghdad or wherever inside of Iraq. And if they hit a roadside bomb, they had an ambush, whatever, sure, there could still be fatalities. And even though you're a 42 Alpha, you could still be in dangerous environments for those type of situations. Other situations could be like a mortar attack, right? You'd be working in a nice, cushy, air-conditioned building, but if there's a mortar attack and that mortar strikes that building and takes it out, sure, there could be still that risk of, getting killed in action or getting killed in that combat environment because the building got blown up by a mortar round. So does it eliminate, the possibility of danger? No, but it's still pretty low. Really any other kind of situation where if that 42 Alpha had to leave the FOB for whatever reason, sure, but that's normally not a common thing that MOS does. They're mostly working inside of a building to take care of things inside of an office environment. Now with a 42 Alpha, let's say outside of combat environment, pretty much zero, danger in that kind of a thing, other than, anything that someone else would have to encounter, like maybe a car accident or something else, that would possibly happen. But, that MOS is definitely working inside of an office, in a garrison environment, an environment that's not in a combat deployment type of thing. And the danger is extremely low for that. But from there, let's move into a dangerous one, which that is a 12 Bravo, which is a combat engineer. Especially in my experience, combat engineers were typically your route clearance individuals. These are people that are out on the roads quite often. They are specifically looking for those roadside bombs in those environments such as Iraq or Afghanistan. They're trying to find that kind of stuff to try to stop it from hitting another convoy or some other friendly forces. So they are right there in the danger area. They also have the job of clearing obstacles, and that can be in a dangerous environment. If they're trying to clear out some, razor wire that's gone across the road the enemy put out there, well, maybe the enemy's watching that razor wire and they attack them while they're in the process of trying to remove that. There are a lot of environments that combat engineers can find themselves into where they could be susceptible to IEDs, to roadside bombs, to VBIDs, those vehicle-borne IEDs, to ambushes, all sorts of things that could put them in some kind of danger. Especially that whole route clearance aspect, where them doing route clearance, that one is a pretty scary one. I mean, you're basically just trying to clear the roads for bombs. Sometimes you have mine rollers and other equipment that you're trying to find these explosives, and sometimes these explosives go off on those individuals, and that can be a very dangerous environment. Outside of a combat environment, kind of similar to the 11 Bravo that I talked about, it's still potentially a little bit dangerous because of training that's going on in different kind of events. They're working with explosives, they're doing things, so accidents can happen, malfunctions can happen, and when malfunctions and accidents happen with that type of MOS and the training they're doing, it can be pretty dangerous. So again, a high risk of danger in that combat environment for that combat engineer. Not a zero risk or danger in a non-combat environment, but there is still some risk because of the training and the type of things that they do to train up for combat environments. Transition over to a non-dangerous one, and that is a 92 Golf, which is a culinary specialist. These are the cooks. These are the people that prepare food. So again, it's very similar to that 42 Alpha, right? Instead of working in an office, they're working inside of a kitchen. They have usually a location for them to work inside of a DFAC. Maybe it's a building, maybe it's a tent, maybe it's whatever, right? There's all sorts of type of environments they might have in a combat environment where they're cooking the food, they're preparing the food, they're pushing it out to individuals, and most part they are working on the fob. Now, I will say that probably the danger level might be slightly higher than that previously mentioned human resources individual, because I have seen like cooks where they have to, drive a truck because it's carrying chow, right? They might be, going into a log pack, is what it's called, or convoy that is going to be taking chow out somewheres, and during that time, maybe in transit, they could hit a roadside bomb, they could, be susceptible to ambushes, all sort of that kind of thing. So they would be a little bit higher of a chance of driving out on the roads, but still nonetheless, it's not a super common thing. Now, in my experience, most of the time when they're transporting food, it's usually somebody else is transporting the food, somebody that's already on mission that is going out on these log packs to take the food out to another fob, another cop, whatever the case was. And rarely, but occasionally, there was cooks that they would have to use their own vehicles to transport the food. But in my experience, most of the time it was somebody else. But again, it probably still does escalate the danger level higher than something of a 42 Alpha, because there is still the chance that maybe they are the ones that has to go and transport the food, or maybe they need to go set up a mobile kitchen somewhere else, and that requires them to be on the road for that kind of environment. So there is some small level of danger, but it's not overall really that dangerous of a job. Unless you're counting possibly getting burned, but I mean, we're not talking about that kind of a thing, right? We're not talking about if you burn yourself cooking some food or something like that, and it's dangerous because of that, because of hot oil or a grease fire or something like that. We're talking about more of like combat environment type of things. So in a garrison environment, that's probably your only risk, right, of danger, is possibly burning yourself, maybe some kind of grease fire or whatever, some kind of kitchen accident that causes some kind of injury. Outside of that, not a very dangerous job, especially in a non-combat environment. Now, one last one of the ones that I will talk about as far as dangerous and non-dangerous MOSs. Again, be aware, I'm not trying to include every single possibility, but just give you a handful of them. And the last one I wanted to include was actually my old MOS, which was an 88 mic and motor transportation operator. Now, I'm not trying to say it was a dangerous job because it was my MOS and try to make me sound like I'm a high-speed, cool guy that was in danger all the time. I'm trying to say it because it's realistic. You're in that kind of a job where you're on the road all the time. 88 mics, and really you probably could even wrap into this those the fuelers, the people that drive the fuel trucks, because a lot of times when we were going out on the roads, so were the fuelers. And maybe there's other MOSs that probably fall in the same category because they're having to transport equipment like ammo, right? That was a 92 Bravo or something like that. The ammo specialist probably could fall in the same category as well, right? MOSs that have to go out on the road all the time because that's part of their job. And 88 mic falls in that kind of category because you're always out on the road to take food out, to take supplies out, to take sometimes even ammo, fuel, whatever it was that need to be hauled on these trucks to other locations. So you're very susceptible to, in the environments of like Iraq and Afghanistan, where those roadside bombs, those V-bids and those, ambushes and snipers and all sorts of things that are dangers in those type of environments. I mean, sometimes people bash on 88 mics because technically, to some people, this is a pogue job and it falls in that category, I guess, of the acronym and everything. But there are some people that'll be like, man, I would not want to be on that MOS in Iraq or Afghanistan because of the danger that there was going on with these roadside bombs. This was a job that did not very often allow you to just stay on the base or stay on the fob. You were probably on a daily basis, for the most part, out on mission that took you outside of the wire, outside the gates of the fob, and out into the environment of Iraq or Afghanistan to do whatever you had to do to deliver whatever supplies you're trying to deliver. So other MOSs that have to drive on the roads could fall in this category, but I wanted to include 88 mic because that was my old MOS and I have that experience of that. But like I said, ammo handlers, fuelers, other MOSs that have to drive trucks that are going to be going outside the wire to do missions probably fall into the same kind of danger level. Now, outside of a combat environment, probably not too much as far as danger inside of this MOS. Even though it's really dangerous in a combat environment, not that dangerous really in a non-combat environment, other than the risk of maybe like some kind of accident. You wreck the vehicle, you're in a large truck, so maybe the accident probably sucks pretty bad because of the size of the truck, whatever, but outside of that, probably not that big of a danger. So this one's not quite as dangerous like 11 Bravos or those combat engineers, right? As far as outside of a combat environment because of training. This one has some level of danger, right? Maybe you could be at those training events because you were the one delivering the ammo out to that range and something happened or whatever, but for the most part, not really on that same level as far as outside of a combat environment being all that dangerous. Now, there are other MOSs, right, that are dangerous and non-dangerous ones. There's probably a lot of non-dangerous ones. I mean, you have a lot of MOSs that are office related, that are just in types of environments that are maybe away from the action, especially like you have certain individuals that are like fires individuals that sounds like a dangerous MOS and still does have some degree of danger to it because you're firing off explosives, firing off rounds, you know, into the sky, but you're usually pretty far away from the battle, but there's still the risk of maybe, you know, something going wrong or some kind of attack or something happening still. But there are a lot of other MOSs that I'm not mentioning here that are dangerous or non-dangerous, and I want to hear from you guys, right? If you are veterans out there, you know, that have been in jobs, you know, that you feel is dangerous, non-dangerous, explain them down in the comment section down below. I want to know why you feel your old MOS or your current MOS is either a dangerous MOS or a non-dangerous MOS. Now, on the topic of, you know, you're wondering which MOSs are dangerous, which ones are non-dangerous. I was also talking about combat deployments, and you've probably heard about non-combat deployments, things like going to Germany, going to Poland, all sorts of things like that. And maybe you want to know what is the difference between a combat deployment and a non-combat deployment. Well, you're in luck because I have a video right here that explains the differences between those two so you can learn all about it. Check out the links down in the description box down below for affiliate links as well as social media and everything else. Make sure you hit that thumbs up, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.